everyone, and welcome back to TeqTalk, the show where we unpack the tech decisions that actually move regulated industries forward. I'm Jas Kaur, the CTO at Tech Focus, and today we are diving deep into a sector worth $1.3 billion in annual US revenue, and it's growing rapidly with 7.5% a year. That's home health care. My guest today is Venkatesh Guruprasad, who has led engineering and product across freight logistics, fintech payments, telecom, and now serves as BAYADA's Home Health Care's Director of Data, Architect, and Governance. Thank you so much, Venkatesh, for joining the show today.
Thanks for having me, Jess. I'm honored to be participating in your podcast.
Absolutely. So, Venkatesh, before we actually start, tell me about your career, how you started, what you worked on, what are the exciting things you're doing now?
I started my career about 26 years ago, so I've been in the industry from that long. And, I started from a role perspective as a software developer when I came out of my grad school. At some point, 8 to 10 years into my career, I realized that I don't want to get stuck on the technology track and really move out and understand the impact of what technology brings into a company and building companies and to an organization overall, both inside in and outside in perspective. So ventured out and took on different roles: technical architect, solution architect, project management, program management. And then I zoned in on product development and product management, probably for the last 15 plus years into this tenure. Worked in a bunch of small companies, large companies, startups, right? Last two things have been on the startup world, different domains. Like my initial part of my career was in account receivable, account payable related products. Then I moved on to core data analytics, machine learning, data science kind of a space. And, before I joined BAYADA, I was in a supply chain, international supply chain company where a startup where we were building technologies in that space, right? So joined BAYADA in October 23 here. It'll, getting close to 2 years into my tenure in this job. This is my first foray into healthcare domain and specifically home healthcare, working for a company which has a rich history, mission oriented, which is like a 50-year-old brand, right? So
yeah. Quite a diversified career trajectory, I would say. That pretty impressive. And one thing over an overall journey of yours, one common thing which I have found is data. You are very closely working along with data strategy, building, architecturing, all of that. We'll be discussing all of that, but let's start our discussion with the healthcare, home healthcare, the business side and the functional side, because currently your contribution in the BAYADA is pretty massive and that's very impactful. So let's go and talk about the hot news which is coming up. That is the proposed 2025 CMS policy, and looks like it's going to weaken the US home healthcare system. So as per the news, the overall payment is going to cut by 6.5% in 2026, which is around 1.35 billion compared to 2025, right? And it's huge, I would say. So does that mean it's a loss of money to providers, which means further reduction in the staff, further reduction in the initiatives, and closed locations and turn away from the patients? And I would like to know more from your side as well. What do you think is going to get impacted a lot in this?
in terms of impact, this would be huge, right?
Yeah.
You ask any expert in the field, when you cut social net programs, really serves a wide group of folks in the society, it will have a larger impact.
Yes.
I think the misnomer sometimes when people hear this, it's only going to affect illegal aliens, or it's going to affect only certain segment of the problem. It's actually incorrect, because the way the whole system is set up is, let's say, hospital system in Kentucky or some rural area loses get coverage, because most rural hospitals, 80-90% of their revenue comes from Medicaid, right?
Right.
So if they lose coverage because government no longer are willing to pay for the services, right? Then what will the hospital system do? Hospital system, will raise the prices, right, to stay alive, or they will go out of business, right? One of that. If they want to stay in business, they're going to raise the prices, which means the payers, the insurance companies has to foot the bill. The insurance companies eventually will go back and increase the premiums for the rest of the population, because the whole insurance is, based on cohort system, right? You are
Right.
cohort, it is risk-based policies. So the risk level, they raise up the risk and it affects the entire population, right? So I think government social net programs has been a big contributor to keep the premiums the way it is, even though it is like the most optimal way how healthcare system works in this country. But that has a big say on how much government covers for the some of these programs, right?
Yeah.
So in case of us, if these programs continue to get cut at the pace that it's been proposed, it has a larger repercussions on the home health side, because people who don't want to stay in hospitals, those are clients that we serve on.
Right.
They don't want, and the cost for them to be in the hospital is a lot larger, right?
Yes.
8 to 10x more than getting care at home,
Right.
and find shop their own. So that's our core business. Yeah, we are constantly looking around ways to optimize our business in terms of support, in terms of capabilities. We can bring in autonomous things on the ground. But at the end of the day, we are a people's-oriented business, right? So we are a service sector. You need to be interacting with people, so you can't just replace, a nurse with a robotic nurse overnight, right? It does. Maybe certain functions of it in the next couple of decades can be done by a robotic nurse, but a robotic nurse won't really bring in the empathy and the things that are required.
Yeah, human touch is always needed, especially in this industry, which is pretty sensitive, right?
Yes.
And I mean, going back to this budget thing. So one hand, we are talking about innovations and automation and making, starting AI. So that requires budget, right? And one hand, if you see, there is a lot cut in the budget. So what do you think, how it's going to line up, and what is the proportion of innovations going to happen in next year or so?
So I think in home health, I can probably vouch for home health, venture out and talk about other healthcare.
Yeah, I'm curious about home health, because this is
So in home health, the way the industry has been set up, right, and been run in the last 50, 60 years, has been based on, like, you provide care, you go get paid, and a certain amount of the money that you make will go back to the caregivers, and the remaining is to operate the business, right? So most forward-looking home health agencies in this space really look at optimizing their whole business workflows in new investments, bringing in technology and capabilities, right, to optimize that stuff. With the advent of AI, a lot of jargons are thrown at it, right? To say, for example, the biggest chunk of work that a nurse spends in home health is the amount of time they spend on documentation when they're sitting in somebody's home. It's about we have done a lot of time motion studies, and it takes about 40 to 50% of their time sitting in somebody's home, not providing care. It is making notes, manual thing, documentation. And people say, why do you need to do it? Like, why can't you put autonomous things, like put AI agent and all? The issue is not about creating a AI agent or AI solution to automatically capture notes. The issue is the EMRs or the EHRs in this field is so antiquated that some of these systems are built in the 1980s, 1990s stuff. They are not really built to bring in heavy duty modern tech capabilities to attach to their services. So most companies, what they end up doing is they add this as add-on services, which means in its isolation it works, but now you need to integrate that information to the main workflow into the it's a tall order, and that's where governance, data flow, immediacy of the data, like all of those things, security, all of these things comes into picture, right? So I would say forward-looking companies, which I'm happy to say BAYADA is one of them, is they continue to invest back in the business in terms of innovation, a certain portion of the dollars that we make, and that is helping us to meet up to catch up to all the things that are happening in the market, and really go out and see whether this is the right fit to our need, irrespective of where it is in the innovation cycle.
Right, absolutely. I mean, there are a lot to be discussed in terms of, the integration of systems. We will deep dive into all of that. But looking back to your career, you have worked in multiple industries, multiple domains. So what is one knot here at BAYADA which you are trying to untangle? Tell me more about your initiative which you are taking in BAYADA and how it is creating or going to create an impact.
Yeah. So I was brought in to basically create the foundational framework and the capabilities in the company to scale data in the
Mhm.
enterprise, right? Data, whether it is all the way from the origin system all the way to the consumption layer or anything in between, right?
Yeah.
And also optimize the data flow, the data engineering architecture into the new world and make the consumption more self-service focused, right? So it is not dependent on engineers to get answers. An
Mhm.
executive in BAYADA or an office director in BAYADA, a client service manager in BAYADA should be able to go to some place and ask questions and be able to get the right level of response at the right time, right? So they can make those decisions faster.
Mhm.
Uh, so where we are like right now is in the last 2 years, we have built a foundational, what we call as the enterprise data lake in BAYADA, all
Mhm.
invested in one particular stack on Databricks. So we
Mhm.
put in on one platform and say we are going to go all in using our Databricks open architecture, open source based tool sets into within BAYADA. And we are also implementing a bunch of tools around it, both on governance, self-service, and other capabilities to bring in the abilities for us to innovate faster, right? With
Yeah.
current tech.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think it's very important for any leader to, choose the right stack. There are so many competitors in the market, and choosing what fits best in your system is a big decision as well. So, let me paint a quick picture for our listeners. A typical US health system, it juggles more than 16 plus data systems, and mostly all of them are isolated, right? And now add 25,000 caregiver providers on road. And the fragmentation is like pretty massive. The industry is so sensitive. So, what does that fragmentation feel like at BAYADA, and how you are trying to, integrate all of these systems? Or what is the success factor you have got so much? I'm pretty sure there will be still a lot to be integrated and done. So, I would like to learn more about that phase and integration side.
Yeah. So BAYADA, if you look at as a company, is about
Yeah.
7 practices. We have about 5 different EMRs, right?
Mm-hmm.
So our opportunity to optimize the workflows and the data flows in the company is a lot more complicated.
Mm.
Because we have different EMRs. They are, you know, be used for different kinds of services we provide on the ground, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some of these EMRs are forward looking. Some of these EMRs are stagnated in terms of capability. So we are like forced to adapt our data strategy around, okay, how fast we can get the data from the EMR, whether it's always be a batch oriented system or can it be continuous real time ingestion of the data. So what we have now figured out is we are able to create the right source ingestion patterns from these EMRs at the frequency that we know it's more palatable to run our business.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have built the capabilities around it, both on transactional processes that we need to run, and also on reporting analytic warehouse processes we need to run, right? To bring in all these two things together in a more streamlined manner, right? So as a specific example, BADA is very big on what we call as cubes, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was built using SQL Server stack. We have a lot of operational metrics, financial operational metric, and other kinds of metric, business metrics stored in these cubes. So
Mm-hmm.
these cubes today with the current day, with the tech that it is running on, probably takes 10 to 12 hours to compute. So
Oh.
with with the advent of these new capabilities, we are now able to shrink that into like 1/10 of the time to run those
Mm-hmm.
cubes, right? So kind of move the needle, even though we are a batch oriented system, but we create the outcome so fast, it doesn't look like it is a batch system from the
Mm-hmm.
end user perspective, because we're able to take the rest of the workflow faster, right? So those are capabilities we are continue to add on, and also reduce our investments on things that technologies that can be sunset as part of the process to get ready for the future, right? In terms of how self-service can be enabled, how Gen AI based tools can be applied or provided to our office staff so they can go out and get their answers on their own without a technical person in between.
Yeah, great. And you mentioned that you have moved from some legacy system to Databricks Lakehouse. So, and adopting more of kind of medallion architecture, right? So, tell me more what Databricks is able to provide, which you are not getting in your legacy database. If we can quickly walk through the top 3 to 4, highlights that Databricks has amazed and made the cost come down and make the things easier for the users as well would be great.
I would say our top factors why we chose Databricks are we can segregate compute from storage, right?
Yeah.
Which is the new modern way of how people need to consume data and also process them, right? So that's one, and it's also built on open architecture, open formats, and the whole stack is open source, right? So we are not getting into a lock-in solution, just like compared to other vendors that are out there in the market. That was the other thing that was appealing to us is now we can basically leverage platform as a service model where we can augment ELT, ETL processes, machine learning, reporting, analytics, Gen AI, LLM, you kind of name any kind of new services we want on board. We are not really going out of the stack, right? So when you put AWS cloud, we are using a bunch of services, stitch them to make the outcome. But here you're all actually building it in one place. So investment for you to leverage the right level of skills, hire the right level of skill, maintain them, and scale the support cycle for human skills will actually go down over time because this is a platform model rather than me going out and stitching individual things, right? Most obvious thing is performance and speed, right? We can't get around it. And what we figured out was with the technologies we had with SQL Server and Snowflake and the way we were implementing them, compared to where Databricks is like nights and days difference, right? So we are able to get, the factor of 5x to 10x, improvements on performance as we move these processes into Databricks, right? And so those were all the primary reason why we chose Databricks. And we are also regulated industry, so we also wanted the common regulations like HIPAA, SOC 2 compliance, and all those things are all baked into the platform, so we don't have to worry about meeting those regulations.
Of course. I mean, regulations, again, it's a big mandate, and being in this industry, you just cannot ignore it. So tell me more about the use cases. I'm pretty sure you might have started thinking, if not actually started implementing, but at least you might have started thinking about the use cases related to AI, which you're going to do this year or coming years. I think Databricks is already in place, which will help in getting the cleaner data. And then what kind of use cases are you going to put on top of it to make it fruitful and impactful for the organization?
Yeah, so we are considering a bunch of use cases. One of the basic things that we are trying to modernize using AI-based techniques is building our own, what we call as the entity model in BAYADA, right? For all the business data that we have in the company, whether it's a client, a worker, provider, payers, those are all the core business data that we manage. We are in the process of building an entity model around it using AI techniques, right? That's, very foundational things that we are doing that will immensely help how we improve the quality of the data, both for transactional process and also for analytic process in general. The other areas that we are actually probing on, and in some places where we are actually in early stage POCs, is one of them is called decision insights. So the decision insights is a concept that we are exploring in the company where we want to enable chatbots, which can allow the user to interact with the data within the domain or the segment of the business that they need to focus on, and ask them real world questions, right, to the data, not like a traditional one, give me, last quarter's revenue versus this, right, which is very basic in nature, but more human-like conversations that you can to say why this revenue went down, more than say what is the revenue, right? Why why that becomes a harder
Yeah,
part.
it becomes like you're looking for more kind of reasoning answers instead of just a small number or yes, no, true, false kind of
So
an answer.
So we have done a bunch of pilots internally and, on that space with the different vendors who are like built capabilities around the Databricks as a stack. So that is one chatbot like experience we are exploring. The other one is, even though it's not a true AI solution, we are trying to mainstream our capability of self-service back to the end users, right? So an office staff should be able to go to a portal. They should be able to access their own data, build their own pivots, build their own, reports in a self-service mode, so it doesn't become a data engineering function, by providing the right semantic layer, the right data models for them to serve their business, right? As a starting point, we are working with our FP&A team to roll out new tools like Sigma Computing right now as a way to enable self-service in the company, right? So that one. On the practice side, on the EMR side, where we are working on a few pilots which are focused on documentation, which is a very natural thing. In home health care, anybody who deals with, not just with home health, anybody who has to deal with Medicare and Medicare, your final input to getting paid is you have to create a OSS document. That's like the format you have to adhere to. So we are exploring tools which can take voice, convert the voice into an OSS format, and also populate all the fields in the EMR by using voice rather than somebody keying through an iPad.
That will, I think, make things much simpler, right? And quicker as well.
Yeah. So, but the barrier there is all these tools that are out there in the market are ancillary tools which can talk to the EMR if it has an API, but some of our EMI don't even expose APIs. Now you have to do an RPA process to take the data from the tool to push it back to the EMR. So we are like figuring out what the right mix of tools and technologies are there. And we are also excited with the MCP servers, the AI agents, market and the capabilities evolving in the industry, that there is a segue for us to solve these problems where we cannot exchange data to these platforms through an API or any other way. We can use these other newer concepts to improve the user experience. Right?
Yeah, that's very important. And you have already started doing a lot in terms of automations and implementation of AI, cleaning data and all of that. So tell me more about some of the top tips or lessons which you have learned while doing all of this process.
So I think what we have done, and I think we at BAYADA has been extremely diligent on it, is like, one thing that favors us is we are a nonprofit. We are not really bound by a specific deadline if the deadline doesn't make operating sense to the business, right? So I think kind of in some way we are kind of blessed being a nonprofit, so we can kind of take our time to do the right thing in a right way, right? But excluding those factors, what we have been able to craft on the ground is like we don't go out and put a technical solution to solve a business problem. We have a very methodical way of how we actually approach where an AI solution makes sense, where a human solution makes sense, where a hybrid of AI and human is the most operating sense, right?
Yeah.
So whenever our business user says, hey, I have this process that is inefficient, or I need to, improve this process 10x, first we go out and understand what is the use case that we are trying to solve, and do we have the right level of data, the right level of governance, and the right level of decisions we can take on top of this data before we actually go and implement a technical solution, right? What I have seen in other companies before, prior to BAYADA, is there is a tendency that they take the most shiny object that's out there in the market and force fit it to your business. It will never work, right? Especially in healthcare, when you deploy a solution to our user base, which is 90% are operational centric folks, it's a binary option for us. It either succeeds or in between, right?
Yeah.
I can't throw in a chatbot to a end user with several hundred people and just say, what, by the way, this chatbot will hallucinate like 1% of the time.
Yeah.
Non-starter.
No, not gonna work like that. So that's very interesting and very factual, because I was also talking to one of the CIOs of healthcare, and he was also quoting something similar. He mentioned that, see, our main focus is serving the patient.
Yeah.
and making sure that the return rate of the patient reduces. That is our main focus. This buzzword of AI automation, it shouldn't change our main focus. So we will implement AI only when it is 100% successful, or it gives the factor one, or it is working for all. There isn't any option of, it is working moderately. So that cannot happen.
Yeah. Because I think, and I always tell vendors who throw in a bunch of capabilities to us as, hey, we can do this for you. I'll ask them always the hard question to say, have you ever sat down with a business user in a domain like us and really understand the pain, why certain things happen certain way, right?
Right.
Sometimes it is not just like you going out and spending a ton of money and say, I'm going to buy a Lamborghini car because I can go out and I need to outrace everybody else and spend $1 million on a Lamborghini. But you may be buying a Lamborghini car, but the chassis and the motor inside may be running at the speed of a Toyota Corolla, right? Because in healthcare, that's what will end up happening, right? So I think we need to be careful of that. And that's what we have been, every opportunity somebody says, can we solve this? We actually go back, take a step back and say, is this the right use case? Does it provide the right ROI? Then we figure out the technology in between, right? Because the technology scales exponentially, right? What runs today takes 10 minutes, 6 months down the line, that whole process, that 10 minutes will be running at 1 minute, right? But the cost for you to go from 10 minutes to 1 minute, is that really what you want for the business or something else, right? So I think those are all choices that we are very, very diligent, right, as we review them with our business.
Yeah, and I think there should be a balance, especially in the healthcare. There is a lack of a lot of budget. Keeping budget, keeping service, everything in mind, there should be a balance amongst all the entities and stakeholders. And how do you manage the conflict? You mentioned before that there are a lot of traditional and legacy systems still there, and integrating with any other system could be a problem. So how do you manage the conflict between people, those who are sitting on legacy system, those who are not ready to adapt any change, and the technology which is growing so fast? How do you manage a balance between these two?
I think a little bit tricky. It really depends on the culture, organization culture, I would say. As much as it is technology capabilities that you can throw at it. Like if the organization culture is conducive for innovation, then these conversations a lot easier, right? It doesn't really matter. As an example, if somebody is running my SQL warehouse for the last years, I go to them and say, I'm going to take an year and basically sunset this tech and move to Databricks. Obviously anybody who's managing it for a decade, they will not be happy with it. And it's sort of a protective thing, right? Hey, I'm going to lose control on it. But if they're able to buy into the innovation culture that is being set up, both at top down and bottom up level in the company, then those decisions becomes very natural, right? So we can make them part of the decision, not dictate them that to say, hey, you have to, use this new tech. And my approach has been, after I joined here, is not to dictate a technology or force fit a technology to a need, but get these people who are critical to the business, get them on board, especially on the technology front, to say, hey, there's a better way to solve it. And by the way, that journey of getting them on board is also a phase cycle, right? It doesn't change over time.
So you basically include those people in the whole journey starting from beginning, which makes things much easier and help in convincing them. And
Yeah. And I think at the end of the day, we are dealing with technology people. They will have hard opinions on what technology they want to build on or what they don't want to build on. And some instances, you will have to kind of break the tiebreaker and say, guys, we have spent enough time, but we are going to stick with it. But when you stick with a particular tool set or a technology, you better be at a position where we can produce results in a timely manner. So you can take the whole organization with you, right? You can't go out and do a project that take 2 years where they cannot see the outcome until the 2 years is complete, right? So you have to take that in iterative mode and get these people along the journey. And over a period of time, opinions will change.
Yeah. I think very valid. And what are you looking for next couple of years in terms of innovations and automations, implementing AI? Give me a couple of use cases which you are planning to. implement or at least foresee?
Yeah. So obviously, we are very big on decision insights, and I think I talked about it at my speaking session, even in Databricks Summit recent. When I joined the journey of getting into core data science, consulting or analytics space, the biggest driver was democratize analytics, democratize data into the end user. And the way you democratize data is you create actionable insights. That's the term that we always used to use, right? That was part of our pitch deck. Any conversation we'd say, hey, what do? We can create actionable insights for driving a marketing campaign or XYZ. I think with AI, the current day AI that exists today, actionable insight will not cut it. And I'll give you an example. If you go to an office and say, which is very relevant to, our scenario is we are very big on recruiting. And most of our talent comes from local communities that we hire, that we serve our clients, right, within those communities. And if you go tell our office director that, hey, your insights for actionable insights for this quarter has been your recruiting went down in this, particular role, and you have to do XYZ things to bring it up. That will not cut the cord anymore. We should be able to say, can I make a decision on it right now? Right? So if my recruiting went 10% and this because of a bad job description I put on my job portal, can I go out and automate the job description the next week so I can see the improvements of the quality of candidate and sourcing for the next hires I'm making, right? It put all those pieces of puzzle together. That's where the decision needle, the making the decision is not a hierarchical function anymore in companies. It needs to be in the hand of the operators who are sitting on the ground. So they are be able to trust the data that they are dealing with and enable the decisions on their own. It doesn't need to be a long drawn process that I have to go to a marketing team, I have to go to this person, update the ad, update the job description, all those stuff, right? All those things can be streamlined with current day tech, right? And that's what we are really big on. And that's what we are experimenting on, a bunch of capabilities, right? That's one. Documentation is a very natural fit to it. And we are also looking at how do we combine all the business functions into the EMR using AI techniques, so we can use EMR as a EMR, and any other that we do outside is only going to enable the scaling piece of it. We are also looking at VBC, right? Value-based care, where most of our contracts can move from VBP to VBC, which is a huge benefit for BAYADA. So a bunch of, use cases like that, right?
Great. So thank you so much, Venkatesh. I think it was amazing. Thanks for providing all the insights and really added on to the values. And thanks for breaking down the reality behind the buzzword, right? Especially in this industry, which is quite sensitive and requires a lot of governance and compliance. Tell me, other than work, 9-to-5 job, what interests you? What are the things you love doing?
For me, I'm really fascinated with the capabilities that are available at our preview right now with AI, and how we can actually improve day-to-day experience, what we do on day-to-day things on the ground, right? I'm not really talking about, can AI write an email, compose an email, summarize an email, can ChatGPT do XYZ things, right? We live in an era where the reality of people building new products or new capabilities, like with a 2 to 3 man company and scaling it to $100 million or $1 billion is real now in these days. That's not the case, even 3 years ago. So I'm exploring, opportunities to say, how do we take the, like a real estate transaction, right? End-to-end pipeline of real estate transaction, how we can streamline that to using AI tools and techniques. So we don't have to go through this ordained process of, okay, I'm trying to buy a home, all the way to, how when it gets closed and what happens in between. Can we automate our stuff? So we are not dealing with the way how we interact with the agents and then our real estate agents and other things, how we actually go and buy a property or buy a close, right? That's one area. I'm also looking at. Yeah. So on the flip side, I've told it's a bunch of innovators in the space to say the biggest gap in home health is the EMR, the EMR itself, right? The tech of EMR. And I'm really surprised that in today's day and age, why can't anybody build an open source based EMR in home health? That will actually skyrocket the usage of it. You have hundreds and thousands of agencies just in this country. Everybody will be adapt to it because it will be built on open, standard open principles.
Yeah.
Not how the other platforms are built on today, right? And I don't think we are too far away getting there, but those are all like a couple of, ideas that I have on the table that I'm continuing to explore.
Great. That's pretty interesting. And I think we have to talk offline about these two initiatives which you're working on, and pretty interesting to know overall. Thank you so much, Venkatesh, for your time and coming to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Jas, and we'll be in touch. Thank you.
Sure.